Hey Luke, it's John Moeller with Get on the Track. I'm just doing the data review from our last session. It was our second day together in the GR86 and wanted to just do a review, do the analysis of the lap. I will also have videos of the breakdown between the demo lap that I did and your fastest lap, and I'll add my notes to those videos as well. But for this, we're just going to take a good look at the actual data itself. I think we've talked about this before, but just to do a quick recap, red line is going to be your fastest lap of the day, which was a 134.537, and then this 131.908 is the baseline that's the baseline lap that we did together. And then on the data, we can actually see green line represents my lap, and then the red line is yours. As far as the data goes, we're looking at our pedal position sensor. So this tells us what we're doing with our right foot. We're looking at the GPS speed, and then we're looking at the time compare. RPMs, not really too concerned about that. That's actually just going to be a reflection of the automatic transmission, right? So anyway, just want to dial in and get rolling. We're going to start off with turn 11. On this is effectively backing ourselves up a little bit on the track. But what I do want to say is you did a great job with turn 11. I actually saw it at the end of this lap as well as at the beginning. Your speed is identical to mine, which means you got great drive out of that corner. You are rolling down that front straightaway with pretty much as much speed as I could find out of the car. So really nice job there. From there, we're entering turn one. And at turn one, the difference between the two of us is that I left my braking point a little bit longer than you. And then I also just bring that car down to the apex with a little bit more speed. The big thing here is that on track out from this corner, I actually let the car out a little bit more, which allows me to do two things. It's widening that arc a little bit, uh, increasing the amount of grip that the car has because I'm not forcing it to turn as much. But it also allows me, if we take a look at that throttle trace, we can see that I take advantage of that, full advantage of that, and really apply that throttle as I'm heading into that turn in point for turn two. And you can see this with my peak speed. I've got 6 miles an hour on you before I turn in and turn down to turn two. So just something to keep in mind when you're running that line. Really get that car down to that apex and then let it use however much track it needs on the right hand side before bending it back and across to that left side and that turn in point for turn two. Um, I think these lines are relatively accurate with the GPS. So the two lines here, I do feel like there can be a little bit of skew with the GPS. But the big thing I'm going to talk about with turn two is releasing that car and letting it run out a little bit further. So as we see, I turn down, turn in. I'm using brake pressure, so both of us are actually braking in a similar fashion to get that turn into turn two. I'm just coming in at a slightly higher speed, but bending that car down to the apex, which you're doing well, and you can see that in your video. But then from there, by letting that car out, and I let it out a little bit too much on this one, but by letting that car out, I can maintain a little bit more mid-corner speed. And so if you see like my gain from doing all this, so from turn one up to the effectively turn two, the turn in for turn two, or the apex rather for turn two, I've gained about a half a second on you. So we can definitely work on this and build on that. And then as we come through here, I continue to gain a little bit of time on you. And then on the exit here, we're going to see I am carrying a little bit more speed than you. Although one thing I want to call out is as we're coming down that side straightaway, make sure you get that throttle pedal all the way down. When we're on a straight, we want to fire that car down there and just really use whatever horsepower it can give us. So I think staying on the throttle likely increased my advantage here from, maybe a mile an hour. It looks like barely a mile an hour, if anything, as we go through there. But then as I continue to stay on that power, that's giving me just a little bit of an advantage. And by the end of the straightaway, I think we're up to a 2 mile an hour advantage. So it does make a difference. So just want to call that out with that side straightaway. Coming into turn four, we can see, and if you review the video, I do want to call out, I carried a little bit too much speed into here. And so I definitely came in a little bit hot. That caused me to miss the apex, but we need to find this balance between me coming in too hot and you braking a little bit early here and not coming in with quite as much speed. What we're going to see here in from the speed chart, this kind of hip right here in the angle like basically your speed is not decreasing as rapidly. I like to see this because what it tells me is you're making adjustments mid corner. You and even a little bit prior to mid corner. That's on entry. And so what this tells me is you're starting to for lack of a better term, run the math in your head as we're going down or as we're coming into that corner. And you recognize right here that, hey, I don't really need to be going this slow to enter that corner. And so you gave up a little bit of braking. And then at that point, your speed started to match mine, right? And so that's a great thing to shoot for. The one thing that's happening here is it looks like you overslowed a little bit. So I think there's kind of a sweet spot that we can find here where you're using that lighter brake pressure to get that car to rotate down to that apex. And so by doing that, even though I missed the apex, I still managed to exit that corner with quite a bit more speed, that corner being turn four. So as I exit here, one thing I'm going to call out, I really like to see this. So coming through here, I think I was a little bit, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it washy. I didn't have the confidence that I should have in the throttle, and I think part of that is I was fighting to get that car down to the apex. However, from your standpoint, you came in a little bit slow, but what I like to see is I like to see we're coming down that hill and you said, man, I'm going to rip on that throttle. And you did, you ripped on that throttle. And I'd like to see it carry a little bit deeper, but just the fact that you're applying throttle and not coasting over that hill is a really good sign. So I want to give you credit for that. Definitely drive that car down that hill. And then what's going to start to happen, and you're going to see it happen here with me, if you notice the significant drop in my speed here going into turn five, that's because that is a braking event for me. As we gain speed, we're going to need to use those brakes a little bit more. So definitely want to see you get a little bit closer under the curve here, and that'll get your lap times a little bit faster. All right. So as we go into turn five, I want to call out again, if we start carrying more speed, that'll be a braking event. But I want to call out how much of a patience turn five is, patience on the throttle specifically. So if we take a look at our throttle traces, right? Mine's not perfect, and I'll own up to that. But what you see is I start to apply it at about the same time that you do. I think I've got a little bit more confidence in the car, a little bit more, a little better feel for the grip. But when I apply it, the curve is tending to go up versus here. This is an event where I'm fairly confident. You started to go on the throttle and then said, I need to wait a second, and then started going back on it. And then it was a little bit of hesitation here, a little bit of a little bit of a lack of confidence, if you will. So definitely, I'd love to see you start applying that throttle and carrying a little bit more speed through there. That said, because I was relatively slow going to the throttle here, our speeds started to collapse in terms of turning into very similar speed as we exit turn five and enter onto that long back straightaway leading into turn six. So as we see it here, right, like we're seeing the my throttle and your throttle matched. We're seeing the speed increase very similarly. It looks like maybe I get 1 mile an hour at certain spots on here. But the thing I want to call out is look at what happens on that throttle for turn six. So as we talk about turn six, this entry into turn six, that turn in, I'm seeing you start to fall off on the confidence on that throttle, and that's obviously costing us a relatively a significant amount of speed as we come through there. So we see, it's 94, 90, it's still 1 mile an hour. So I would definitely like to see some more confidence in here. Just that area under the curve, right? I'd like to see you close that up. The best way that we can do that is, again, as you're coming through the corner here, and I'm going to set up right here, as you're coming into the corner, the thing that I really want you to do is I want you to register that that apex is there, but then I also want you looking for that track out cone, because being able to look through that entire corner gives us that confidence that, hey, everything's going to be all right. We aren't rushed. It's just a nice smooth movement where we drive that car down to that apex. I want to call it out. We get bonus points if we hit the rumble strips that are on the inside there. I love it when we do that. So we want to look through that corner, get the car down to the rumble strips, and then right out to the track out point. So rumble strips at apex. So that's going to allow you to carry more throttle, more confidence as you come through that corner. So we do see my braking entry as I coming into turn seven now. We can see my breaking point is a little bit later than you coming into turn seven. And again, we see I'm a bit more aggressive on the brakes, which is why my speed is coming down at a sharper angle than yours. Um, I do want to say what's interesting here is turn seven you're doing pretty well with turn seven. So if we do effectively, if we move to where the speeds match just after turn in to, we'll call it the exit of turn seven, that time comparison there, right? Again, speeds match, it's about 2/10 of a second it's about 2/10 of a second that you lose to me, which over the course of this lap, which was there was the difference between us was 2.5 seconds. That's insignificant. And what I'm saying by that is that turn seven was a pretty nice run from you. I'm pretty pleased with that. The one thing that we're seeing here is, and we're going to start working on this. This is breaking rather than carrying that speed through here, carrying that speed closer to the apex. What we're seeing here is we're seeing your min speed happen well before that apex. Whereas if you look at mine, I'm getting closer to that apex. So the way we're going to adjust that is I'm going to have you that turn in cone on the outside of turn seven that we see out here. We're going to start not relying on that as heavily. And what I mean by that is rather than being way track left at that turn-in cone, I'd like to see you a little bit closer to mid-track, and you can see the variation in the lines here. I'm coming in a little bit shallower. I'm not really close to the grass here, but I come in a little bit shallower, and then I'm using this area here. If you look at it, right? So you're done braking, you're done slowing down there and trying to accelerate. If you look, this is where my min speed happens, putting me closer to that apex. And then like I don't feel like I'm coasting. I don't feel that need to go on the throttle. And you can see that from our throttle traces right here on the exit of turn seven. We see you ramp up and then there's some hesitation and then you ramp back up. And versus you can see with me, I have a slight dip here, but then it's full throttle all the way on the exit to turn seven. So that's next time we work together at Harris Hill, that'll be an adjustment that we'll make is we're going to look at trying to trail break further into that corner, carrying that speed, making sure that we still have, if you will, extra speed as we come down towards the apex, and we're bleeding it off with a light brake pressure and turning the car in. And that way we can carry that speed a little bit further into the corner. Again, minor detail. I'm not going to knock you because you only lost 2/10 of a second here, but ultimately we will find some more speed here. All right, that brings us up to turn eight. So with turn eight, you can see again, this is kind of similar to turn four in that, and actually a few of the other corners in that we see I'm carrying this extra speed early on in that corner at turn in, and what that's providing me with is more energy to get those front tires to grip, and you can see that right here this significant shift, this significant drop in my speed, that's me shifting weight to the front tires to provide more grip so that I can get that stick that I need to get it through the corner. It may seem it might not seem obvious, but that's exactly what's happening here is I'm using that extra energy in the car in order to shift the weight forward and get that front end set. So then what that allows me to do is as those front tires start gripping, I can start applying that gas more aggressively. Here I was a little bit soft on the exit. I'm probably trying to fight to make sure that I make that track out and don't run off track. But this is a very good example. So if you look at your throttle trace, there's some doubt here. There's kind of a lack of commitment, and we have, and this is fine. This is normal for where you're at in terms of your development. But something we can work towards is if you look at mine, there is a sharp drop off, and then there's a relatively confident throttle application going up to full throttle. I'd love to see that from you in the future, and it's definitely something that we can work towards. All right. So as we exit eight, we can see I've got a relatively good speed gap on you. Turn nine. Turn nine is a tough one. It's a commitment corner. You have to carry a lot of throttle through there in order to get a good lap time. Frankly, even here, I wasn't running at 10 tenths, obviously. But if I were to run at 10 tenths, you'd likely see this throttle trace continue further and getting me closer to that straightaway that leads us up to turn 10. Again, turn nine, the difficulty here, right, is know turn 10 is coming up at you, and we've talked about that. You have that psychological thing of, there's a tire wall out there, there's a grass, there's all this other stuff at turn 10. Turn 10 is really tight, but the reality is when we look at the track map, it's our braking zone is basically from here to here. And so we want to be hard on that gas until we get close to that braking zone. And then, man, we really want to hit those brakes hard and slow that car down and get it to where we need to be. So would probably honestly see us going, if based on these traces, this would likely be your break where you start braking. And that's pretty much where that track out cone is going to be, maybe a little bit prior to that. So anyway, that's turn nine. I just want to see more confidence on the throttle and carrying it a little bit longer and carrying a little bit more entry speed. We can also kind of see that braking here, right? So again, I want to call this out. You kind of recognize that you braked a bit early, so you waited for a little bit, and then you started to apply good pressure and get that car slowed down. Now, again, talking about corners that you did very well on, turn 10, great job. Honestly, really, really good job here. At the end of the day here, I gained a tenth of a second on you, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. If we're running a lap, that's 2.5 seconds different. Only thing that I would suggest here is just remember that line. I definitely want to see you get all the way out to that turn-in cone, and then I want to see you get down to that apex, using that brake pedal potentially. And you can see that here. This is evidence of me trail braking. again, right? Like same thing we've said on a number of different corners, just carrying that speed a little bit deeper into the corner and then using that energy to get the front end to grip and get that car to turn in. That's the only thing that's really going on here. And then, ironically, my min speed is a little bit lower than yours, but then we can see on the throttle trace, I go to that throttle pretty darn hard. And there is a little bit of a lift there on exit. I suspect I was probably getting a little bit of wheel spin there or a little bit of rotation. But that said, again, the time difference here, negligible. You did a really good job coming through turn 10, and then to finish it up with turn 11, quite frankly, you're doing exactly what we should be doing. We're seeing full throttle all the way through turn 11, just letting that car eat and running through to the right places, the right markers. So that's really good lap. Honestly, great run. I know we weren't running equal cars, and so unfortunately, the 134 it isn't numerically as impressive as what we saw on our last session. But given the fact that our two lap times are very similar, I think you're getting a lot from that car. You're getting very quick, really good progress. So. Until next time, I guess I'll see you at Coda and definitely appreciate being able to work with you again.